It is the sweltering night of August 10, 1977, and New York City police officers surround a brick apartment building in Yonkers. Detectives watch as a stocky, 24-year-old man approaches his yellow Ford Salicle parked at the curb. Detective John Falitico steps forward with his weapon drawn, peers into the vehicle, and spots a paper bag containing a .44 caliber Charter Arms Bulldog revolver resting inside. The suspect turns to the officers, flashes a calm, chilling smile, and speaks in a quiet tone. He says, "Well, you got me. What took you so long?" Falitico presses the man, asking, "Now that I have got you, who have I got?" The young man answers in a soft voice, "I am Sam. This single surrender brings a sudden halt to a 13-month reign of terror that paralyzed the largest city in the nation." The summer of 1976 blankets New York City in a suffocating heat wave. The metropole struggles under the weight of a severe financial crisis, rolling blackouts and crumbling municipal infrastructure. Trash piles up on the sidewalks, and a general sense of unease permeates the concrete avenues. Yet, in the outer boroughs like the Bronx, working-class residents carve out vibrant, close-knit communities. The Pelham Bay neighborhood stands as a bastion of Italian-American tradition, characterized by neat brick row houses, well-swept stoops, and heavy wooden doors. Generation after generation of families live within walking distance of each other. Street lamps cast long pools of sodium light over the residential avenues, creating a peaceful contrast to the chaotic urban decay in Manhattan. In these enclaves, neighbors know one another by name, and an unwritten code of community watchfulness provides a deep sense of security. Young adults flow in and out of local diners, discotheques, and corner cafes, embracing the energetic nightlife of the 1970s. The heavy hum of window air conditioners creates a steady drone throughout the humid nights. Parents rest easy, trusting that their children remain safe in the familiar streets just outside their front windows. 18-year-old Donna Lauria represents the very best of this hopeful generation. She shares an apartment with her parents on a quiet stretch of Bouyer Avenue in the Bronx. Donna possesses an energetic spirit, a bright smile, and an intense dedication to helping others in times of crisis. She works as an emergency medical technician, spending her days riding in ambulances and providing critical care to strangers across the city. Her job demands immense emotional strength, yet she maintains a vibrant, joyful social life with a close circle of friends. After long, grueling shifts, Donna loves to dress up and head out to local clubs, dancing away the stress of the medical field. She values her independence but remains anchored to her family, always making sure to check in with her parents before coming home. For Donna and her friends, the automobile serves as an extension of their living rooms. It is a long-standing neighborhood tradition for young men and women to sit in parked cars late into the night, sharing secrets, planning their futures, and unwinding after an evening out. The heavy steel doors and rolled-up windows offer a private sanctuary for these intimate conversations. On warm summer nights, rows of vehicles line the curbs of Bouyer Avenue, holding dozens of young dreamers. One of Donna's closest companions is 19-year-old Jody Valenti, an aspiring nurse who shares Donna's passion for the medical field. The two young women spend countless hours discussing their respective careers, their romantic interests, and their plans to build lives in the city they love. Their friendship represents a bond forged by shared ambitions and deep mutual trust. In late July, the relentless heat wave breaks, giving the residents of the Bronx a brief respite from the stifling humidity. Families open their front windows to catch the evening breeze, and the sounds of television broadcasts drift down onto the pavement. Donna and Jody plan an ordinary night out, looking forward to escaping the confines of their respective apartments. They decide to visit a popular local discotheque called Peaches in the neighboring city of New Rochelle. The girls spend the evening surrounded by music, laughter, and the company of other young adults seeking a distraction from the grind of daily life. Nobody in the club that night has any enemies, and nobody harbors any dark secrets. They are just ordinary citizens living out their youth as the night draws to a close. Donna and Jody exit the club and climb into Jody's blue Oldsmobile, preparing for the short drive back to the comforting streets of Pelham Bay. The blue Oldsmobile turns onto Beauware Avenue in the early hours of July 29, 1976. Jody parks the vehicle near a street lamp outside the brick apartment building where the Loria family lives. The geography of the street offers a clear line of sight in both directions, framed by parked cars on either side of the narrow road. Jody turns off the engine, but the two friends remain in the front seats, unwilling to end their conversation. A large tree casts deep shadows over the sidewalk, just a few feet away from the passenger door across the street. The windows of neighboring homes remain pitch black. Donna's parents sleep in their apartment just a few yards away, waiting for the familiar sound of their daughter's footsteps on the stairs. Jody sits behind the steering wheel while Donna occupies the passenger seat, leaning back against the headrest. The street is silent, save for the distant rumble of a passing delivery truck on a parallel avenue. The safety of the neighborhood lulls the girls into a state of total relaxation. They have sat in this exact spot countless times before, shielded by the quiet predictability of their community. At approximately 1 o'clock in the morning, a solitary figure emerges from the shadows near the sidewalk. The unidentified man steps out from behind the trunk of the large tree and walks with purpose toward the passenger side of the Oldsmobile. He wears dark clothing, fading into the dim lighting of the late-night street. Without uttering a single word, the man reaches into a crinkled paper bag and produces a heavy dark metal object. He squares his shoulders, plants his feet firm on the pavement, and raises a .44 caliber Charter Arms Bulldog revolver. He points the weapon straight at the closed passenger window. The deafening roar of gunfire shatters the quiet Bronx night in a fraction of a second. The glass explodes inward, raining sharp fragments over the interior of the vehicle. The stranger fires multiple heavy rounds in rapid succession, showing zero hesitation and zero emotion. One projectile strikes Donna Lauria, ending her bright future in a single moment. Another round strikes Jody Valenti, tearing into her thigh and causing immense physical trauma. The sheer force of the large caliber weapon rocks the heavy American car on its suspension. The explosive noise jolts the entire neighborhood awake. Donna's father, Mike LaRua, hears the distinct cracks of gunfire from his bedroom and rushes down the stairs to the street. He makes a grim, devastating discovery just feet from his own front door, finding his daughter unresponsive and her best friend screaming in agony. The shooter makes no attempt to open the car doors, nor does he demand money or jewelry instead. He turns around and walks away, melting back into the shadows of the concrete jungle. Patrol vehicles from the New York City Police Department arrive on Beauware Avenue within minutes, their flashing red lights painting the brick facades of the neighborhood. Detectives secure the perimeter, tape off the street, and begin combing the asphalt for clues. They extract large caliber lead fragments from the upholstery of the Oldsmobile, recognizing the destructive power of the weapon used. The crime scene investigators search for a logical motive, looking for signs of a botched robbery or a targeted gang retaliation. They find absolutely nothing. The total absence of a rational explanation leaves seasoned investigators disturbed. This random act of destruction marks the definitive starting point of an unprecedented crisis that will strip away the safety of the entire city. In the weeks following the tragic loss of Donna Lauria, investigators from the 8th Homicide Zone canvass the Bronx neighborhood street by street. Detectives knock on hundreds of heavy wooden doors, questioning local shop owners and compiling lists of known offenders in the area. The investigators chase false leads, interviewing disgruntled ex-boyfriends and local gang members without finding a single solid connection. Every avenue yields a complete dead end, The sheer lack of a centralized data system forced officers to rely on handwritten index cards, creating a chaotic paper trail that slows the investigation to a crawl. The hot summer transitions into a crisp autumn, and the residents of New York City begin to believe the shooting was an isolated anomaly. This fragile comfort shatters on October 23, 1976, in the quiet neighborhood of Flushing in the borough of Queens. 20-year-old Carl Danero and 18-year-old Rosemary Keenan park their vehicle on a secluded, tree-lined residential street after a night out. The physical layout of the block isolates the car, surrounded by high hedges and spaced far apart from the nearest street lamps. Without warning, the glass of the driver's side window shatters under the concussive blast of a heavy-caliber firearm. The unseen attacker fires repeatedly into the confined space, striking Carl in the head and causing massive trauma. Rosemary shifts the vehicle into gear and accelerates away from the scene, seeking immediate medical help that ultimately saves Carl from a permanent end. The shooter vanishes into the quiet neighborhood without leaving a single fingerprint behind. The following month, the nightmare crosses back into another peaceful Queens neighborhood. On the evening of November 26th, 16-year-old Donna DeMasi and 18-year-old Joanne Lomino walk toward Joanne's home in Floral Park. The two young women pause under a glowing street lamp at the base of the front porch steps to chat. A young man dressed in military fatigues approaches them from the dark sidewalk, asks them for directions, and then instantly produces a heavy revolver. The attacker fires multiple rounds, striking both girls before turning and sprinting into the night. Joanne sustains a devastating spinal injury that steals her mobility forever. In the immediate aftermath, ballistics experts at the New York City Police Department Crime Laboratory conduct a microscopic analysis of the recovered lead fragments. The technicians make a chilling realization. The distinctive rifling marks on the large projectiles from the Bronx and the two Queens crime scenes match perfectly. The perpetrator uses a rare .44 caliber Charter Arms Bulga revolver in every attack. This definitive forensic link forces the police department to recognize they are hunting a single, highly active serial predator. The top brass forms a massive task force dubbed Operation Omega, consisting of 300 dedicated officers. However, massive systemic failures immediately cripple the newly formed team. The rigid jurisdictional boundaries of the New York City Police Department create an administrative nightmare for Operation Omega. Detectives in the Bronx use a different filing system than detectives in Queens, and local precinct captains refuse to share their daily intelligence reports. Investigators must manually search through tens of thousands of paper records at the gun registry office looking for legal owners of the Charter Arms Bulldog. The lack of a centralized computer database means officers spend weeks reading smudged carbon copies, entirely missing the fact that the predator purchased his weapon out of state. On January 31, 1977, the attacker strikes again in the affluent neighborhood of Forest Hills. 26-year-old Christine Fragan, a bright young professional with a recent engagement ring on her finger, sits in a parked Pontiac Firebird with her fiancé, John Dial. The vehicle sits near a busy commuter train station plaza, sandwiched between tall brick apartment buildings and a row of dense bushes. The attacker approaches the passenger side and fires 3 devastating rounds through the glass, stealing Christine's promising future in an instant. Traumatized eyewitnesses from the surrounding area provide wildly inconsistent accounts of the fleeing suspect. Some witnesses describe a tall man with blonde hair, while others report a stocky figure with dark features. The police department issues conflicting composite sketches, directing patrol officers to focus on entirely false suspect profiles while the real predator walks right past them. The relentless pressure continues into the spring of 1977. On March 8th, a young college student named Virginia Voskerichian walks home along a residential sidewalk in Forest Hills located just 1 block away from the scene of the January attack. The predator steps out from behind a tall hedge, raises the heavy revolver, and ends her life before she can even cry for help. A month later, on April 17th, 18-year-old Valentina Suriani and 20-year-old Alexander Esau meet a tragic end while sitting in a parked car near the Hutchinson River Parkway in the Bronx. At this specific crime scene, the task force makes a grim discovery resting on the pavement near the shattered vehicle. The perpetrator leaves a handwritten letter addressed to New York City Police Captain Joseph Borelli. The writer mocks the investigation, boasts about his actions, and formally introduces himself using a terrifying moniker, calling himself the son of Sam. While the city reels in absolute panic, the author of the letter hides out in plain sight as a quiet employee of the United States Postal Service. The man lives in a cramped 7th-floor apartment in the city of Yonkers, located just north of the Bronx boundary. The physical geography of his neighborhood features tight, steep streets with houses packed closely together. From his high vantage point, the young postal worker obsesses over the backyard of his neighbor, a man named Sam Carr. The isolated tenant fixates on Carr's black Labrador, a dog named Harvey, projecting his own deteriorating mental state onto the animal. The perpetrator privately rationalizes his late-night hunts by convincing himself that the black Labrador is a demonic entity demanding human sacrifices. He maintains this bizarre internal narrative while continuing his daily routine, sorting mail and interacting normally with his coworkers. Meanwhile, the police department establishes a dedicated telephone hotline to gather public tips regarding the son of Sam. The hotline receives thousands of daily calls from terrified citizens, reporting every suspicious neighbor, ex-husband, and peculiar stranger in the 5 boroughs. The rigid paper-based protocol of the task force demands that officers type out every single tip onto a triplicate form. Clerks then file these forms away in massive metal cabinets, sorted strictly by geographic precinct rather than by the name of the suspect or vehicle type. This archaic filing method creates a fatal legal loophole, allowing crucial public tips about a strange young man in Yonkers to vanish into an ocean of paperwork, recognizing the paralysis of the police. The predator escalates his psychological warfare against the public. In late May of 1977, he mails a second-hand written letter directly to Daily News columnist Jimmy Breslin. The letter contains chilling insinuations, arrogant taunts, and a promise that the hunts will continue through the summer. The newspaper publishes portions of the text, transforming the hidden attacker into a terrifying urban legend. The mature citizens of New York City demand order, but the task force remains completely stalled by their own internal bureaucracy. The psychological terror grips the entire metropolitan area as the sweltering heat of the summer of 1977 descends upon the concrete avenues. Young women across the city, recognizing that the predator targets victims with long, dark hair, rush to local salons to alter their appearance. Pharmacies sell out of blonde hair dye, and retail stores run out of short wigs. Nightclubs, diners, and movie theaters remain completely empty after dark, stripping the city of its vibrant youth culture. The task force officers work exhaustive double shifts, yet they remain powerless to stop the next strike. On June 26th, the shadow falls over the Eliphas Discotheque in the Bayside neighborhood of Queens. 17-year-old Judy Placido and 20-year-old Sal Lupo exit the club and enter a vehicle parked under a dim streetlight in the sprawling asphalt parking lot. The immense open space of the lot offers zero cover, yet the attacker manages to approach the passenger window completely undetected. He fires 4 heavy rounds into the vehicle, causing severe physical trauma to both young victims, though both miraculously survive the ordeal. The shooter retreats into the humid night, leaving the task force with yet another handful of deformed lead fragments and 0 actionable leads. The predator returns to his Yonkers apartment, confident in his own superiority, and certain that the broken system will never connect a postal worker to the citywide nightmare. The stage is set for a final tragic confrontation in the borough of Brooklyn. The oppressive heat wave continues into the final day of July 1977. The terror shifts to the southern edge of Brooklyn, in a waterfront neighborhood known as Bath Beach. The physical geography of the Shore Parkway features a wide pedestrian promenade bordering the dark waters of Gravesend Bay. Tall street lamps stand far apart, casting weak circles of sodium light over the sprawling park benches. 20-year-old Stacy Moskowitz and 20-year-old Robert Violante walk along the seawall after a quiet evening date. They return to Robert's vehicle parked on a desolate stretch of the asphalt road. The two young adults sit in the front seats. The shadow emerges from the darkness of the nearby park. The figure steps up to the passenger side. He raises the heavy metal revolver. He pulls the trigger 4 times. The glass shatters into the cabin. Stacy meets a sudden, permanent end on the front seat. Robert sustains massive facial trauma that steals his vision forever. The pivotal breakthrough in the 13-month nightmare arrives from a mundane administrative procedure rather than complex forensic science. A local Brooklyn resident named Kekelia Davis walks her dog along Bay 17th Street shortly before the incident occurs. The narrow residential block features dense rows of parked vehicles and a single bright fire hydrant near the corner. Kekelia spots a stocky man holding a dark object walking with rigid determination toward the parkway. She feels a deep sense of dread. She turns her attention to the curb. She observes patrol officer Michael Catano writing a standard municipal parking ticket. The officer places the citation on the windshield of a yellow Ford Galaxy parked illegally next to the fire hydrant. Following the tragic news the next morning, Kekelia reports the suspicious man and the ticketed vehicle to the police. Operation Omedi investigators immediately pivot away from their useless composite sketches. Detectives manually search through stacks of carbon copy parking citations issued in that specific Brooklyn precinct. They isolate the single ticket written by Officer Catano on Bay 17th Street. The paper record identifies the owner of the yellow Ford Galaxy as a 24-year-old postal worker. The registration lists his name as David Bekowitz, residing in the northern city of Yonkers. On August 10, 1977, a massive task force descends upon Pine Street in Yonkers. The geography of the neighborhood consists of steep hills, narrow concrete sidewalks, and a towering 7-story brick apartment building. Detectives spot the ticketed yellow Ford Galaxy parked directly at the curb. Investigators peer through the driver window. They spot a rifle resting on the rear bench seat. They see a threatening handwritten letter lying on the floorboard. The legal visibility of the weapon triggers the plain view doctrine. This crucial legal rule allows the officers to secure the vehicle without waiting hours for a judge to sign a warrant. The detectives establish a perimeter around the building. They sit in the sweltering heat. They wait for the predator to emerge. David Berkowitz finally exits the heavy glass doors of the lobby, carrying a dark paper bag. Detective John Filatico steps forward with his service weapon drawn. The detective secures the .44 caliber revolver from the bag, ending the longest manhunt in the history of the metropolis. Following his arrest, the young postal worker travels in a heavily guarded convoy to police headquarters. Detectives place him in a barren interrogation room. David Berkowitz willingly waives his legal rights. He eagerly details every single attack over the 13-month spree. The suspect attempts to weave a bizarre supernatural narrative to explain his actions. He insists that his neighbor owned a black Labrador named Harvey. He claims the animal acted as a vessel for an ancient demonic entity. He tells the astonished investigators that the dog transmitted orders to hunt human beings in the streets. The mature detectives listen quietly to this elaborate psychological facade. They recognize the arrogant deception of a predator attempting to build an insanity defense. Months later, Berkowitz drops the charade entirely. He admits to medical professionals that the demonic dog story was a complete fabrication. He constructed the lie to avoid standard penal consequences. The supposed monster hiding in the shadows was simply a deeply disturbed individual masking his cruelty behind a fictional urban legend. The legal system assumes control of the case to determine the ultimate fate of the perpetrator. The presiding judge orders a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation to assess the mental competence of the defendant. The court appoints 3 distinct mental health professionals to examine the psychological records. 2 of the 3 psychiatrists fall for the initial deception. They declare Berkowitz mentally incompetent to stand trial. These 2 doctors genuinely believe the suspect suffered from uncontrollable schizophrenic delusions. The 3rd psychiatrist thoroughly reviews the same clinical data. This dissenting expert files a fierce objection with the court. The doctor identifies severe personality disorders but insists the defendant fully understands the difference between right and wrong. The judge reviews the conflicting medical reports in a tense courtroom hearing. The legal system sides with the dissenting psychiatrist. The magistrate declares David Berkowitz legally competent to face his accusers. The strategy to escape justice through a psychiatric hospital crumbles under strict judicial scrutiny. The court schedules the criminal proceedings to move forward. The definitive conclusion of the legal process arrives in May of 1978. David Berkowitz stands before the judge and enters a guilty plea. He accepts responsibility for 6 counts of second-degree taking of a human life. The magistrate sentences him to 6 consecutive terms of 25 years to life in a maximum security state prison. The enormous public spectacle of the trial exposes a massive vulnerability in the legal framework. Greedy publishing executives offer the convicted predator massive financial contracts for the exclusive rights to his story. This infuriating reality threatens to turn a convicted criminal into a wealthy celebrity. Outraged lawmakers in the state capitol immediately draft groundbreaking legislative reform. The state legislature passes the historic Son of Sam laws. This rigid legal barrier prevents any convicted felon from profiting financially from the publicity of their crimes. The legislation seizes all generated revenue and redirects the funds to the victims. This crucial legal reform spreads across the nation over the following decades. The new statutes ensure that the financial rights remain solely with the innocent families. The legal system permanently severs the perpetrator from the wealth of his own infamy. The vibrant metropolis slowly reclaims its parks, its streets, and its nightlife. The physical scars of the city begin to heal, but the emotional trauma remains an enduring burden for the affected families. The surviving victims face years of grueling physical therapy and permanent alterations to their daily routines. Families of the lost citizens visit quiet cemeteries across the 5 boroughs. They mourn the bright futures stolen by a phantom menace holding a heavy metal weapon. The true heroes of the tragedy emerge from the ranks of ordinary citizens and dedicated street cops. A simple parking ticket brings down a predator who believed he could outsmart the entire municipal government. True justice prevails through the observant eyes of a woman walking her dog on a quiet Brooklyn street. The arrogant letters mailed to the newspapers become a dark footnote in American criminal history. The legacy of Donna Loria, Stacy Moskowitz, and the other victims lives on in the reformed legal protections. Their memories stand in stark contrast to the hollow arrogance of their attacker. The residents of New York City learn a devastating lesson about the monsters hiding in plain sight. The community rebuilds its shattered Trust One neighborhood at a time. The heavy wooden doors unlock, and the youth of the city step back out into the summer nights.